All right, so we have an all-new game that we would like to talk to you about. We played the party game Manicdotes. So, Greg, what is Manicdotes?
Well, Lauren, let me explain this to you. See, it's no, I'm kidding. Manicdotes is a card game wherein you are trying to tell a story.
Yes.
And within your story, you have to start it with a certain phrase. And you have to include 5 key vocabulary words within that story, and you have only about 2 minutes to tell your story.
Yeah, and you have the card for your starting phrase that you start your story with, and you pick a card that shows your 5 words that you need to include into your story.
Meanwhile, the other players, they have these nifty little pads of paper that have the lines there for them to try to guess what your 5 keywords were. So the point of the game is that as I'm making up the story almost on the spot, they only give you about 30 seconds to look at your words and start formulating an idea in your head, and then 2 minutes to tell the story. They have to try to guess what my 5 words were. And the point of the game is to try to get, as the storyteller, try to get as many of my words without being guessed.
Yes. So yeah, as the storyteller, you want to tell your story and not have your 5 words be guessed, but all the other players are trying to guess those 5 words. And the players will get a point for every word that they do guess correctly, and you get a point. You get points for words that they don't guess.
Correct. Yeah. So, for example, I have 2 cards here in front of me. I start the story with the following phrase: just chilling around the house. So whatever my story is going to be, I have to start with that. And then the words I have to include in my story, somehow or another, and not necessarily in this order, is imaginary, hostile, rattle, cancer, and birth. Somehow I have to put those 5 words into a story that starts with just chilling around the house. Have fun with that.
Yeah. And what's interesting about the 5-word cards is sometimes the words do have a bit of a theme and sometimes they do not.
I never noticed a single thing with any of these words.
Well, I know, so, I mean, we can get into talking about when we played this game. When we played this, there was at least one instance where one of our friends was telling a story, and she had a bunch of words like chocolate and blueberry and all these other things. And so she started listing off different kinds of pies.
Oh, yeah.
And when I'm guessing the words, I think surely she can't have all those different names for pies. She can't have chocolate, blueberry. Surely I haven't seen
Stop calling me Shirley.
Yeah. I haven't seen any of these cards that have a theme. So it can't be that she got all those words. And sure enough, she did get all those words. And so that was kind of what threw me in my guessing.
Yeah, I actually came, when we were playing this with our friends on our last game night, I had to come up with a rule. Guys, there is no spelling bee in your story. You cannot say, here's a list of words I had to spell today,
Yeah.
and then just list those 5 plus
Yeah,
others.
well, it's also just not a good strategy because that's kind of a clear indication that those are your words. I mean, part of it is based on how good of a storyteller you are, how well you are able to incorporate those words. And then, of course, we also had rules like, maybe you can pluralize something, but you can't transform the word.
Exactly. And they say that in the game here. They say, if you want to add a prefix or suffix to it, you can, but you can't change the word.
Yeah.
I can't change the word imaginary to imagination. That's changing the word.
Exactly, yeah. But you could say, instead of just rattle, you could say rattles.
Yes, exactly.
As in the sound.
Or unbirth, I guess. You could, I don't know what a prefix.
I don't know about unbirth.
Birth. Rebirth? Rebirth.
Rebirth, maybe, yeah.
That's kind of changing the word.
Yeah, I feel like that's changing the word completely.
You can argue this with your friends. Okay? You can decide what counts and does not count. But yeah, overall though, we had pretty good time with it.
Yeah, it's definitely a good party game. It says 2 to 8 players, but 8 players has a plus. You definitely could go up to as many as you wanted.
Yeah, because and then at the end of the round, when you're done telling your story, people have another second or two to write down their last guesses, and then you just read off, my words were imaginary, hostile, whatever, and then people go yes or like darn, and then they count the points, and it's something like the first two 20 points total wins.
And I think the idea of having to formulate a story is somewhat daunting, especially something on the spot where you're having to use these different words. But we really found that no one had a problem with it.
Yeah, like you said, it seems daunting, but once you're in the spot on the night, you just do it.
Yeah. We did find that we didn't need the full time to tell our story usually.
Oh, no.
But there were definite people within our group who I didn't think would be as good as this game, and they actually turned out to be really good at it, and it was really surprising.
I was one of them. She told me afterwards, wow, I was surprised.
But you just think, some of your friends you might automatically think, oh, they're not going to be really good at this. But really, when it came to telling a story, it seemed like everyone was able to do it, and no one had a problem coming up with something on the spot like that.
Yeah.
And of course, they all joked that, it would be interesting the more inebriated they got, how the story went. And it's also something I think would be good to, the age range starts at 8, they suggest. Mm-hmm. But I definitely could see it as being a good game to play with kids as a teaching tool for them to think creatively and use these words properly.
Oh, yeah, definitely. In fact, I even wrote down a few comments that some of our friends had made in the night. And one of them even said, interesting game. It could even be good for, an English class.
Yeah, definitely. You could bring it into the classroom.
Yeah. Maybe not. I don't know if she meant, a English learning class or just, a regular English class. But, still, this would be good for, storytelling and, practicing that skill.
Yeah, using those words, coming up with something on the spot.
I mean, I would, if I was an English teacher, I would definitely consider using this for if we have free time, hey class, I'm going to read your story and whoever guesses the words gets candy or something.
Yeah.
Why not,
Yeah, because you definitely have to use close listening, and there's definitely strategy involved where you're like, would they come up with that word on their own? Would they think to use that word?
Why did they bring up snakes? I don't think she would talk about snakes. So rattle makes me question if rattle is because of the snake, or is it the snake and not the rattle?
We did have one suggestion if you're playing this game. They give you these little sheets of paper for you to write down your guesses on. What we started doing is we actually we kind of put a line down the middle of the pieces of paper. That way we could use them for 2 rounds.
It's because it's like the little piece of paper you get with Clue, where there's only so many in the box.
You only get so many.
It's not that the game's done. You can always just get scratch paper if you ever do run out of those.
Exactly.
The only other recommendation I would have is it says that whoever gets to the most points after a certain time or 25 points wins, but there's no point tracker. Mm-hmm. So what we did is just on the first piece of paper you get,
we started scratching.
You just start tally marking it.
Yeah, we started tally marking it. And really, it's one of those games that, you can do as many rounds as you feel like, and then, okay, who has the most points after this many rounds? It's very flexible, I feel.
Yeah. And I mean, for the small problems this game does have, the fun that you get out of it is more than makes up for it.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
So definitely worth checking out.
Yeah, it's definitely something to add to your party game mix.
So once again, that is Manicdotes.
Yeah, Manicdotes. And you can find them, Manicdotes the Game on social media, manicdotesthegame.com, and you can purchase it on Amazon.
Oh, really? Nice.
Yeah. It's about it runs about $20 on Amazon. It's available on Prime.
You know what? For how much enjoyment you can get out of this, that's not a bad price.
Yeah, and it's available on Prime, so free shipping, 2 days you can have it.
There you go.